Hello, and welcome to this special edition of Game Related. This week, we are hosting our military play tournament and addressing some of the challenges veterans face. Today, we are discussing the unfortunate phenomenon of suicide and the fact that 22 veterans a day commit suicide. Today, we are speaking with Mr. Paul Farrell. He is a survivor of an attempted suicide, and fortunately, he did survive that attempt. And Mr. Farrell is here with us today, and we're going to speak with him about the events that led him to that day and the resources that were available to him once he recovered. Mr. Farrell, how are you, sir?
Doing fine, Dwayne, and yourself?
Quite well, thank you. So, what I'd like to give you an opportunity to do first is to uh, tell us your story. What year in service were you? What kinds of things were going on in your life at the time that kind of led you down that road?
Thank you. I was at probably about the 16, 17-year mark of my career. I was a first class petty officer in the United States Coast Guard. Um, I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, but I lived in northeastern North Carolina. Um, I was going through some financial issues that I was trying to solve myself rather than opening up to others and asking for help, especially from people like my wife. Um, the day that I attempted, I had asked my boss if I could take some time off to go home and take care of some things, and take care of that, and talk to my wife about it, and see what we could do. I lived about an hour away, at about 10 minutes away from home. That's the last thing I remember. I remember going across a bridge um, on my way home. The next thing I remember, I was laying on the ground in Camden County, North Carolina, and had shot myself in the chest and cut my wrists. Uh, I was, what I would have imagined would have been 20 minutes on the ground was actually laying there for about 2 hours.
Wow.
Um, I realized how blessed I was to have, first off, survived it. The round went in my chest and hit my rib and went around my rib cage and caught my lung in the back. And that was the only physical damage I had, uh, which is very, very lucky, all things considered.
Indeed.
Uh, I realized real quick it wasn't my time. Uh, uh, the deputy sheriff, the first thing he did when he found me was obviously make sure I didn't have any weapons. And then he immediately called for the area ambulance, which is Nightingale in this area, before he even told EMS where I was. So the ball was rolling already with getting me the help I needed, um, just in that aspect. I was flown up to Norfolk General. Luckily, when I got there, there was a Navy exchange doctor who knew exactly what boxes had to be checked to make sure that I was in accordance with Navy medical requirements. Stayed there for a couple weeks. Uh, Went over to Portsmouth Naval Hospital. Stayed in the surgical ward for another week or two, and then went up to the psychiatric ward at Portsmouth Naval. Um, was able to start to get help right then, for the mental. Uh, Probably the biggest thing I realized when I was there is that I was actually depressed. Uh, One of the doctors asked me how long I'd been depressive. I'm like, I'm not depressive. He says, I'm sorry you don't get here without it. So that opened my eyes, and I went and started reading some pamphlets and realized how depressed I really was. And that was the first step on recovery. The very first thing is acknowledging that you're human and there's issues. Uh, Luckily for me, my family was behind me. Uh, Both my wife, my daughter, my daughters, uh, brothers, sisters, sister-in-laws, and everything were all behind me. My command was spectacular. They did everything they could to make sure that things were done absolutely right, and so that nothing from the attempt would affect my career.
That's quite a story. So, what what kinds of things were you reading in the pamphlets that let you know that you were actually depressive?
I don't remember what year you went to school, but you remember those old pamphlets they gave you in PE with the bubble heads,
Mm-hmm.
the stick figures? They were those. And there was a checklist in there. And it talks about, symptoms of depression. I'm going, yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes, no. And then added it up, and there were more yeses than there were nos. And that was an eye opener. And it really started me on what I needed to do um, to first and foremost get out of the hospital and get back home where I needed to be, so that I could start healing both physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Okay. Did so? It doesn't sound like you planned your attempt. Was there any planning involved, or was it um, what caused you to pull over and attempt before you got home that day?
I actually went home and picked up the gun, but I don't remember any of that. There was no previous suicidal ideations. I had never thought about it. It never crossed my mind. Um, and talking with my boss at the time, he was very familiar with suicidal ideation and uh, habits and everything that you display. And he was kicking himself in the butt because he didn't see any of them, and I didn't see any looking back. Um, so it came out of nowhere. It just was, my mind did what it did, uh, and I'm, like I said before, I'm just very blessed to have made it through it.
Yeah, no, we're blessed to have you here today, man. I'm glad you made it. What kind of resources did you receive in the immediate aftermath of your attempt?
Probably the first was the deputy sheriff and the EMS and the Norfolk General Hospital. They did everything they could to make sure that I was um, out of danger, uh, not a danger to myself nor the damage that I inflicted. Uh, Obviously, ran the whole gamut of tests and MRIs and everything like that. I had a collapsed lung, which I had three chest tubes, I think, or four chest tubes during the first 2 weeks, trying to get that all healed up. Luckily, that healed up without any major problems. I do have reminders every day of the scars, um, just to keep me grounded.
What kind of resources did you get to start addressing your depression and the mental aspect of getting out of the hospital? It sounds like the hospital took care of you pretty well physically, but what kinds of things did they do for you mentally to help you on the road to recovery?
Once I got done with the surgical ward and went up to the psych ward, um, the whole time you're there, it's all about education. Uh, for more people than not. Uh, that was very enlightening to realize that I was depressed. Probably the biggest thing I took from it, the resources, was I thought my inner circle, quote unquote, was very small. And after the attempt, I realized that my inner circle was very, very large. And there were multiple, you know, 10s, 20s, 30s, multiple people I could have called to talk. Um, if I had had the thought process up to then. I should have asked for help earlier on the financial issues. I should have told my wife a whole lot earlier about the financial issues. And I think if I had done that, that would have altered the course. Um, However, I'm going to say something that may rub some people the wrong way. I think everything that happens in your life is a blessing. Um, as as bad as a suicide attempt is, I came out the other side, and this is just me. I came out the other side a better father, better brother, better um, husband, better shipmate um, than I think I was before. Uh, Mainly because I started caring about myself and others. It wasn't just wrapped up in the financial stuff. It was more understanding what my mind was doing and also understanding that there were tons of people out there that were more than willing to help me. Um, that's probably the biggest thing that I got out of it. I did get an education through the hospital and aftercare. I had to go see the psychologist um, probably twice a week for the first about year, which was great because I was able to work through all the things in my mind that got me there, um, things that I didn't know were there. It made a difference. I was able to go through some subsequent training. Uh, can't think of the name of the course, but critical thinking about things that are going on in my world. Um, since then, I've been associated with some people who have in a roundabout way taught me what my triggers were, and I've got a better grip, and that was just within the last probably 3 years. Um, I now know what my triggers are, and when I do get triggered, I immediately talk with my wife or other people that I have in the inner circle, so I'm not bottling it up.
Good deal. Were there any resources that you wish you had had at your disposal at that time? Was there anything that you feel needed to be done or you needed that was not done?
I don't think so. Not at that time. I think my command was phenomenal. They made sure that I got all the help I needed. My captain came to see me in the hospital, and he told me, "Don't worry about anything military. Your first priority is yourself, your family, and getting those things straightened out and heal physically, mentally, and spiritually."
So, what other, and I'm glad you brought your command up, and supportive command is very important anytime someone has personal issues, this included. Um, I know in some services, uh, suicide attempt is basically grounds for a discharge. What kinds of conversations, once you were able to return to your unit, what kinds of conversations did you have about the status of your career and the fact that they were not going to discharge you?
The At the time when I was in the hospital, the Navy hospital, they told me that I'd be discharged from the Coast Guard as soon as I got out of uh, the psychiatric ward. And I told them that I didn't think that was true in the Coast Guard. Uh, After speaking to my command, that was not true. The Coast Guard, even 17 years ago, treated depression as an illness, not as an administrative issue, which was huge, uh, especially considering that uh, it's not anywhere close. But I mean, depression is a disease. It's a deadly disease if you don't get it treated, just like a whole lot of other diseases. My captain, when he came to see me, told me the very first thing is don't worry about your career. Worry about yourself. We'll handle your career later. And he told me up front, he says, we're going to have to address the financial issues that brought this on. And he made it very clear, not only to me, but to others in the command, that he was not taking me to UCMJ because of the suicidal attempt. It was the financial issues that got me there, um, that he had to address, and I had to address. I went to Article 15. I was a first class at the time, like I said. He did the very, very hard thing of reducing me down to E5. Uh, Hindsight being 2020, it saved my career in multiple ways. He was a wise old captain, '06, that knew what he had to do to save my career. Uh, I also had a personal connection with him outside of work, which made him that more personable to deal with, and it made it harder on him also to not only answer me but answer to family on why did you take a guy that had financial issues and reduce him. Uh, he, in his wisdom, knew that that was going to save my career on the military side. What it did for me, it was my shit or get off the pot moment. It was literally, I had to make a choice to turn myself around, be the best I could be, and not only get my rank back, but set goals, realistic goals that I could do before I retired. And it was all up to me. Um, my my command was super supportive. My supervisor, the XO, the CO, they were all very, very behind me and giving me the tools I needed to be able to succeed. I was able to retire as a chief, which was my goal when I spoke to my warrant officer the day after I was reduced. So with the support of them and my family, I was able to do that.
Well, that's good. That's a pretty good redemption story. I I was also questioning why he busted you when the cause for your attempt was financial issues. I thought it might have been, hey, well, it'll be suspended reduction, and then if you had any other subsequent issues, then you get busted. But um, you made it through, and we're happy about that. So, what kinds of resources are available for veterans who may be struggling with depression and/or having suicidal ideations?
Um, there's a whole ton of um, crisis lines. The VA has a crisis line. Um, I'm sure that you can put a link on the or put a link out for that. Uh, First and foremost, get help. Talk to somebody. Even if you talk to a friend, do not hold your suicidal ideations in. That's the only. It'll do nothing but drive yourself mad. Seek help, whether it's one of the local crisis lines, the VA crisis line, or friends or family, clergy, doctors. For a lot of us military, the chaplain corps is always there. Uh, Basically, if nothing else, just talk to somebody.
Are these resources the same for active, reserve, retired, and veterans who were honorably discharged prior to retirement? Same kinds of
Yes,
resources?
yes, it's both private and military, or private sector and military, all have crisis lines. The VA has a crisis line for veterans. Uh, if you're honorably discharged, or I know for retirees, we still have access to the chaplain corps. Uh, any church, uh, anything like that, just like I said, just get help. Talk to somebody. Um, don't be alone. You're not alone in this whole battle. There's more. Uh, I guess the saying now is it's okay not to be okay. So there's a lot more people out there that are feeling the same thing, and like me, now I'm able to talk about it. Uh, for years I wasn't able to. I talked to my friends, and that's about it. Now I'm able to speak about it, speak about my own personal journey, and the biggest thing is talk to somebody. There's no reason you can't talk to somebody, whether it's if you're at active duty, definitely the chaplain corps, EAP for the different militaries, uh, work life for the I know that's what we call it in the Coast Guard. Work life is there for help, and it's not necessarily the end of a career, and that's I think that's coming along in all of the services. If you're active duty and you're having problems, talk to somebody. Uh, I know, like I said, with the Coast Guard, we've done that for years, where it's not going to end your career if you have suicidal ideations or even depression, not even to the suicide point. You can get your help. It may affect the immediate things that are going on, like with me. Right after my attempt, they suspended my clearance. After I showed that I was on a treatment plan and I was following that treatment plan and seeing the doctor and all of it and taking my meds, within, I think it was like 7 or 8 months, they requested my clearance be reinstated, and it was. So even after a suicide attempt, I still had a secret clearance. I did have it suspended for that period of time, but I was able to check the boxes that I needed to check and follow my treatment plan and was able to get it back. And that didn't stop me from doing anything else in my career. Um, I went to sea after my attempt. 3 years after my attempt, I went to sea, which is probably one of the most stressful things you can do. And I was able to do it.
So you've alluded to some potential career impacts through the loss of your clearance, being reduced in rank. Um, what other potential career impacts are there? And uh, keeping in mind that any potential career impact is not nearly as big as the loss of your life. So, um, what kinds of potential impacts should people be concerned about, and are those huge deterrents for people for seeking help?
Probably the biggest deterrent for seeking help is just the stigma attached to depression. People think and I'm going to use the politically incorrect term. People think they have to man up or woman up. But that's not true. You show more strength, internal strength, by seeking help. Uh, if you're, and I know a lot of people who have not spoken to their supervisors or the commands about suicidal or about depression mainly, because they're afraid that they're going to call them weak and all of this other stuff. And the truth of the matter is, asking for help is a huge showing of strength that you can do. Uh, if you're going through depression, you're not on top of your game, no matter what your job is, whether you're doing administrative paperwork, driving a boat, driving a ship. If you're going through depression and there's things that are in your mind, you're not at the top of your game. You not only owe it to yourself to find help, you owe it to your shipmates and coworkers to seek help. Because if you're not on top of your game, you're going to make mistakes. Mistakes may lead to other issues, administrative issues, discipline issues. So it all circles back to seeking help. For the actual impacts to your career, depending on what you do in your job, they may remove you from your space if you're in a classified space. They may, if you're aviation, they may ground you for a little bit. But if you keep to your treatment plans, and every service has their own rules and policies and everything like that. But generally, if you can keep to your treatment plan and show that you're better, you're more of an asset to the military being treated than you were untreated, there shouldn't be a big problem. It's not guaranteed because every situation is different.
Well, you mentioned that your captain had experience with people with suicidal ideations, and you said you don't recall giving out any. Um, what kinds of things should our shipmates be looking for if someone is depressed and maybe having suicidal ideations? What are those tells?
Um, I don't know them all. Yeah, there's the typical giving things away, um, selling things, getting rid of all their personal possessions, just talking about the end, or talking about the world being better off without them. It may be simple conversation pieces. Uh, the biggest thing you can do for shipmates and friends and family is simply ask them how they're doing. Uh, you may be amazed at the answer you get. They may be honest. Um, I know some people that have, and you've heard some people on different shows and everything talk about someone asked them how they were doing, and that was the piece that kept them going for one more day, which is what they needed to be able to ground themselves, get themselves out of the suicidal ideations and seek help. That's probably the biggest thing I can say is to just talk to people. If you're familiar with your coworkers and your shipmates, and they're not just quite not there, just ask them. You may be the trigger that they need to get help. There's like I said, the typical getting rid of things, not being attached to anything or anybody, going from being socially out there to being very by yourself and lonely. Things like that. You can just usually tell it's the small things. And I didn't do any of the textbook suicidal ideations or depression ideations. So to me, the biggest thing, and it may have been just that, is someone asking me, hey, are you okay because of the things that I was doing? I was going off and I was floating checks to try to cover for my financial stuff. If someone asked me, why are you going every day and to the exchange or whatever, or to the bank? That may have been the thing I needed to say, hey, I need help. But I didn't tell anybody about that. I didn't tell people where I was going. I didn't tell people what I was doing. I thought I could do it myself. The biggest thing I learned from it is I couldn't. I needed help. And hindsight being 2020, all I had to do was ask a number of people.
Wow. So you are a survivor, and have you ever considered committing suicide again, or is that
No, I
something?
have not. I know there are people who continue to struggle with it. Um, I know some people personally that have done it, but that have done multiple attempts. I have not. I was able to realize real quick what I almost screwed up, um, and I was able to get the help and get the medicine and get the counseling and be more open with my family, friends, and shipmates. I'm pretty much an open book now. I tell people where I'm going and tell people what I'm doing. I probably share too much information, but I'd rather have that out there than them question whether they missed something.
Is it possible to lead what most people would consider a normal life after a suicide attempt?
Absolutely. Like I said, I did my attempt. Um, I continued my Coast Guard career for another 10 years. I retired as a chief petty officer. I'm now working as a civilian with the Coast Guard. So I've had nothing but a great career after that. I'd like to think I was better. I was a better coastie, shipmate, friend, everything after my attempt than I was before, because up to then I was hiding stuff. I was hiding what I was doing. I was hiding what I was going through. Now I'm an open book. Um, I I talk to my wife often. She's my hero. I don't know how anybody could have put up with what I put her through, but she is without a doubt my hero. My daughters have been there for me the whole time. My family has, and my friends. Uh, Without a doubt, I've got a very secure network that I know I can talk to at any time.
Outstanding. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to discuss or share with fellow veterans about things that they can do to, if they are suffering with depression, having suicidal ideations, or just need someone to talk to?
Just reach out to somebody, talk to somebody, anybody. Do not try to do it yourself. You're not alone in the journey. Um, Talk to somebody, whether it's a crisis line, a chaplain, a doctor, anybody, but do not try to handle it all yourself. It's not an easy road, and depression is not an easy thing. Some It's varying degrees of how severe it is. I like to think that mine is very manageable, um, mainly because of meds. I've been on medicine my whole time since I got out of the hospital, um, and basically being able to talk to people. If I'm feeling down, I talk to my wife, my friends, um, but I talk. That's probably the biggest thing that I can say is talk to somebody. Don't try to tackle this by yourself. You're not alone.
You are not alone. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your story with us and taking the time to do that this evening. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Paul Farrell, I sincerely appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I hope your story will help some of our fellow veterans. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
And that is it for this episode of Game Related. Thank you for joining us. Hope you are enjoying our military play tournament. If you are yourself struggling with depression, suicidal ideations, anything of that nature, please reach out to a suicide crisis hotline. And as Mr. Farrell shared with us, you are not alone. Don't attempt to do it by yourself. Thank you again. Have a good day.